Hello and welcome to another episode of the Ministry Coach Podcast. My name is Jeff Lascola. I'm here as always with the lovely, the talented, and the beautiful
Kristen Lascola. I felt so dumb saying my name after that introduction.
As you should.
Because that means I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah, that's true. No, you are. They're all three of those things. We have a really special episode today. I'm excited about.
I'm so excited.
An interview for the decades. This person, we'll introduce him here in a second. He is, I would say, not just a friend, but family.
Oh, for sure.
Because we've grown so close to his family and him throughout the years.
And I was trying to think the other day, I think I met him, he must have been 10 years old.
Yeah.
And I think he's 23 now? 20.
No, we can ask him here in a second. It's waiting in the wings.
Let's see if I'm right.
So we would love to introduce to you Gordita Nixon, the junior high pastor at the Ramona campus of North Coast Church. And he is, I would say, youth pastor and just extraordinaire in general.
Yeah. And while one of the most interesting parts of our connection, yes, like Jeff said, his family is like our family. He has a really big family. I told him they should do a TLC reality show called Mixin' with the Nixons, because it's like they have like 3 adopted kids, 2 biological. They live in this big, beautiful house, like right pretty close to us.
Nonstop fun.
And he was actually one of my junior high students. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, he's like only 10 years old. So, but yeah, he was one of my junior high students. And then when he was probably a senior in high school, maybe, he was one of my interns. And I told him, I said, you need to do ministry. Gordy, you should be one of my interns. You got to do ministry. And he's like, I don't know. I have like baseball and stuff. I don't know.
That sounds like him.
I'm busy. And I was like, no, seriously. So the season came where he was on my staff, and it was just as I thought. He was completely gifted for ministry. And then he worked for me for a couple years, and then the Ramona position opened. And here's a really unique thing. We're going to talk a lot about this with Gordy in just a second. Ramona was brand new.
Yeah.
So we didn't ship him off to a church like, hey, this church is hiring. It was like, this church is about to be born.
Right. North Coast Church existed. The offsite campus of Ramona had not been born yet. So.
And it's like probably an hour away from where he lived. Yeah. And it was like a really big leap and a big jump and very scary. And he was young at the time, still is young. And so interviewing him was actually Jeff's idea. Just like, wow, like, how do you just do this? Right. Like being a young guy, starting from scratch, like how do we do this? So
yeah, so basically this episode is all about how do you grow a church or a youth group from zero.
And P.S. do it freaking amazingly, right. Because right Gordy way. I mean, what he's done, it's not just like, hey, you did it, good job. It's like blowing up.
Right.
And he is one of the most valuable key players at that campus in general. They don't look at him like, oh, you're the junior high pastor. Good for you. Go hang out and play dodgeball.
I think he was their first round draft pick.
Oh,
I think he was selected before any other key staff members. We don't even really need to bring him on the show. I think we're doing a good job just talking about him.
So thank you for joining us in spirit, Gordy.
Gordy, how are you doing?
Wow, that was an amazing introduction. I'm just going to take you two everywhere with me, because can you just be my talking resume?
And thank you. And join us for the next episode of the Ministry Coach Podcast.
No kidding. Feel great.
No, thank you so much for being with us. And yeah, just go back. Go back in. What year was it that Ramona opened? I'm not sure.
I believe it was October 2016, I think, was when it opened. So
okay, so you're coming up on 4 years.
Wow,
that's crazy.
Yeah.
That went by so fast.
I was going to guess 2 years.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
2 years.
Jeez, 4 years.
So what was that? Definitely that initial like 6 months. What was that like? You're hired. Actually, go through that process. What was that all like?
Yeah. So funny enough, when I interviewed for the job, I had zero intention of taking the job. It was more about getting FaceTime and getting my name out there and stuff. And so I didn't actually accept the job until I think a month before the campus launched. So I didn't know anybody on the team really, had just met people through interview. So that first 6 months, I would even say like 6 months to a year, was just like constant running and feeling like you're just trying to catch up with like the speed and the pace of everything that was going on. And at the same time, it was an experience that I don't think I'll ever really get again. And I loved it and it was fun. But it was unique for sure because, you get the job and then a month later you're starting and you've only had a month with the staff, and then you're meeting your whole new, or what little church congregation there was at the time, but you're meeting all those people for the first time and just trying to figure out your new job, but also the people that you're working with and the people you're serving. Just a unique experience for sure, and one that was fun, but also crazy stressful. I'm thankful that I don't have to do that anymore, but yeah.
So
great
like
experience.
You accept the job, you're starting to meet people. I think it would be so interesting to hear, like, take us back, like your first maybe like 6 months of you're starting from scratch. You're at ground zero. There's no person that came in and built anything before you. It's like literally you're showing up to Ramona, which, by the way, if you're not from Southern California, Ramona is a small town. It's very farm. It's very country. Very rural. There's like one high school in the whole town. And so coming in there, starting from scratch, like what did you prioritize as like, this is my first 6 months. This is how I'm going to get from ground zero to ground
hero. Ground zero to ground hero. Write that down.
Yeah. Like what were those steps? What was your priority? What did you do?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is, for me at least, and our team, was just take advantage of every opportunity that you get to have any form of contact or FaceTime with the people that are considering coming to your church. Like it's like any opportunity at all, like any chance for a conversation, for a phone call, even something that normally you would think is pretty insignificant. I think any opportunity to have a little bit of a track record or a previous relationship or conversation with those people is just so valuable at that time, because in a way you're selling yourself to people. It sounds bad and it sounds kind of fake and ingenuine to say it that way, but you really are. And so for us, we did a couple like barbecues where families could show up, and my job as junior high pastor is just sit around, meet families. And as soon as I saw a junior high kid show up, just go try to be their best friend in a non-creepy way, and just over the top, try to have that interaction with them. And just any opportunity you can. Like we were given a list of phone numbers of families that had junior high students that had shown interest. And so and as many different ways as you can, like whether it's face-to-face or you phone call or you reach out to them social media. I think you might think it's too much because, you don't do that normally to people. Mm-hmm. But anything possible to build trust with somebody, especially parents who are trusting you with their student, goes a long way, because it makes you feel like less of a stranger when that first service or event or whatever rolls around, and they're dropping that kid off and going, I have no idea who you are. Let's hope you take care of my kid. I think it goes a long way, both the student and the parents, to just every single chance you get, just try to take advantage and make it count, because that is what like ministry is all about, relationship. And I think the hardest part of starting from scratch is having none to go off of. Right. So I think that's what we learned the most in those beginning months, for sure.
And I'm glad you hit on the parent thing. We talked about that in a previous episode, kind of do's and don'ts of youth minister, youth pastors, and you can't be afraid of the parents. That's where they're the ones bringing the kids. If they're not okay with the pastor or with the youth group, it's not gonna work. And so you hit on that, just being out there, not creepy, obviously, but just making sure everybody knows who you are and making them feel welcome. That's awesome. The interesting thing, I think Ramona, you're obviously from Fallbrook or Bonsall, so are we. Interesting thing about Ramona is I feel like it's kind of Fallbrook's cousin, and it's very similar. It's kind of a small town feel and suburb of San Diego County, but going from Fallbrook or Bonsall to Ramona, knowing nobody, how did you go about recruiting your staff? I mean, not obviously not the paid staff, but your volunteer staff. How did you go about solidifying that?
Yeah, I think number one, and this is going to sound strange, but you have to get to a point where you kind of just embrace the awkwardness of the situation. I remember the first youth group night, or when kids were in the room and there's potential like adults there trying to check it out if they wanted to help out or not. It feels awkward and it's strange because the kids are like suspicious of you and feel awkward because they're probably forced to come by their parents, and you feel awkward because you're just kind of trying to make sure they have a good time, but also like impress everybody that's there. And I think the danger of that is you start to focus too much on that and become somebody that you're not. And I think the best thing that you can do is understand going in, it's going to be awkward. Trying to recruit strangers to help out with your ministry is going to be awkward. Trying to get kids to stay is going to be awkward. The only thing you can do really is be yourself. And then I think a key part of that is find people that you think you'd enjoy working with. I think one of the biggest mistakes I made when it came to recruiting and building a team was I would just wanted people to help. So I didn't do a good job of necessarily making sure they were the right fit first, or I don't know who says it, but somebody says the line like guarding the gate, making sure that the right people are on the team instead of just anyone being on the team. Because what I found was I brought in people who wanted to help, and I was just thankful that anybody was willing to help. And it created more problems than it solved problems, because I had to eventually figure out how, now that they're already involved and already connected to students, figure out how to ask them to step aside from the ministry, which just became another burden instead of them actually solving burdens. And so I think it's kind of backwards to think about it, but one of the best things you can do really is go in with kind of a high standard, or really be careful who you choose. Because even in the beginning, to be honest, if it's starting off small, it might be nice to have people helping you out, but you don't necessarily need people to help you immediately if you only have a few students or it's starting off small. So I think it's a good thing to make sure that you're bringing the right people on. That way you don't put yourself in situations that are hard to get out of later on.
Yeah. And I love that you kind of close that with like, you don't have to rush it, like some of my small groups are bigger than my youth group was when it started. And it's like, so the ratio can be 1-10. If it's you and 10 kids, like, oh, well, like that's totally fine and obviously more adults makes it better, but not if those are the wrong people, because especially right in the beginning, Gordy, because like, that's like your DNA, you're laying a foundation for like when people come and check it out. If there's 2 adults to choose from and one's a weirdo, like, wow, like what are we saying about our ministry, And yeah, I think that's such good advice, like to just hold out for those right people. And the longer you were in Ramona, I'm sure just more touch points with people. If you're patient enough, the right people just kind of come, whether it's a parent or, just somebody you meet in the lobby, or someone who's already volunteering somewhere that wants to join your team as well, but not rushing that process.
Right. And one of the best ways to do it, is if you can at all possible, get FaceTime with adults as much as you can. Like in between services, go out and just linger out in the lobby or wherever all the adults are after the service gets dismissed, or go to, even if it's an event without junior hires there, like a North Coast, it's a welcome dessert or just a family barbecue, somewhere where you can meet people that aren't in that junior high circle, are great, because then you meet people, you find people that you like, that you connect with. Sometimes people don't even know that junior high ministry exists and that there's volunteers needed, So
Right.
the more FaceTime you get, I think the easier it is to find people to fit those roles.
Yeah, that's money. That's
Yeah.
such good advice right there. So obviously you kind of walked us through one of your hurdles or whatever, but like when you look back at that time, even though it was, I'm sure, very exciting and challenging, what would you say when you look back is like, this was my biggest problem to solve or my biggest hurdle to overcome in that season when it was just you, fresh out of the gate, starting out? Whether it was like, and maybe you could share too, like what was like maybe a mental hurdle, like just sort of like a head game that was going through, and then maybe like a work challenge, like something that just made your job difficult.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge, at least for me, was knowing that in the beginning you don't have to be perfect. You're not going to be perfect. It's hard when you go in and start something new. You want to make sure every single thing that happens is going exactly the way you want it or the way you planned. But reality is you have no idea what it's going to be like and how events are going to go. And not everything is going to be perfect. And some things are out of your control. Some things are just mistakes you made. And the sooner that you can get over that idea of going, I'm not going to be perfect and I'm going to learn from what I did wrong, and next time I'm going to do it better. And you go with that mindset. I mean, that doesn't give you an excuse to slack or do poorly, but at the same time, it frees you from that pressure that says everybody's judging or watching my every move. And I need to make sure that every single kid that showed up loved it, and that there's constantly a new kid every single week and all this stuff. And in reality, I mean, that just, at least for me, made my job so much harder because it just put extra stuff in my mind that it was taking my focus away from the kids, which should be your number one focus. And instead it was just focusing on my own personal stuff. And each
Gordy,
week,
can I ask you really fast?
yeah,
Because you and I are the same Myers-Briggs, we're ENTJs. You're an Enneagram 3 too, aren't you?
Yep, 100%.
I'm a 3, and as I'm hearing you talk, I'm like, Gordy, thank you for understanding me and my weaknesses.
100%.
I heard your 3 coming through. So yes, Enneagram 3, we're the same on both.
Yep. So I think that was honestly my biggest hurdle. Probably not going to be everybody's biggest hurdle, but for me, it was just letting myself know that it's okay for things to not go exactly the way you plan them to, or for every single, like a kid to say they didn't enjoy something that you thought every single kid was going to enjoy. Mm-hmm. And then I think the cool part is there was definitely times when some of my nights of youth group in the beginning were absolute failures. And I left going, wow, that did not go the way I thought it was going to go at all. And then you learn and you get to do it next time and learn from those mistakes, and people notice. And so the students go, wow, that was so much better than last time, And at one end, it doesn't feel good when they say that because you know how bad it was before. But
the bar was low. The
exactly.
Perfect strategy. I love that. Set the bar low.
Exactly. So I think that was the biggest hurdle. Another, you said mental hurdle from, although that one is kind of mental too, but have confidence in yourself, I think. And I would say for the most part, I'm a pretty confident person, but it's one of the most difficult things when you're starting something brand new is you are, like I said earlier, selling yourself to people, and you are just exposing yourself to be torn down and thrown jabs at or critiqued, not even people doing it intentionally. It's just what happens. Mm-hmm. And there's just a constant pressure on you making sure that you are performing to a certain level or this or that, and whatever your numbers that you're shooting for, whether they're reaching. I think it can be something that tears your confidence down a lot in the beginning because in a way, as much as usually kids show up to youth group and want to be accepted, in a way at the beginning, you want to be accepted by the kids and the people that you're potentially serving. And so
That's why I don't do high school ministry, Gordy, because I'm not confident they would accept me.
Hey, me and you both. But yeah, having self-confidence and just knowing like, hey, you got given this job for a reason. And honestly, the person doubting you most is probably yourself. I think is huge because I mean, I remember one of my first, we did like this pool party in somebody's backyard in the beginning. And I had this game plan, and one of the kids at the start of the game, and she, like, there was only 6 junior hires there, and she was the most popular, influential one. Like, we were going to play a game on grass, and she was like, I'm allergic to grass. And she made a huge deal out of it. And basically, I think 2 kids ended up playing the game because all the rest just followed her. And I remember going home from that event and just being like, wow, it was a huge failure. Like, they followed her instead of me, and my confidence was just destroyed, And so, just stuff like that, and making sure that you give yourself a break and you have confidence and you kind of have a thick skin in a way during that beginning, as hard as it may be. I know there's no easy way to do that, but I think were some of the biggest hurdles for me, which is funny because those are both mental hurdles. And you would think some of the hardest stuff in launching a campus would be, logistics or stuff like that, but right. It wasn't, at least in my case.
I love what you're saying. I was talking to this youth pastor. She's up in Orange County. We were on the phone yesterday, and she said, do you ever get like these weird voices in your head, like somebody else could do it better? And I'm like, totally. I said, like doing youth ministry, like I feel like we're already pretty insecure, but then we're like trying to like put our best foot forward, whether it's through our message or an event, and we want people to grow and be connected. But I think the underlying tone there is like me and like what I'm giving you. And I told her, I said, I hear those voices too. I said, but what I try to remember is like, yeah, maybe somebody could do it better, but if God wanted them, he would have put them here, because, the Bible says that anyone put in a position of leadership or authority was put there by God. And I have to believe that he's chosen you for Ramona for this time for a specific reason. He's chosen me for Fallbrook for a specific reason for this time. And so when we start to doubt that, sometimes I'm like, but why didn't he choose somebody else? Because I didn't go looking for this job. Kind of like you, Gordy, because you were like, I didn't even really want the job. Like, I remember pushing you so hard. You're going to interview for this job. And you were like, I don't know. And I was like, yes, you're going to do it, And it's like, okay, well, neither one of us really chose this position, but God opened doors and pushed and put people in our life like that, pushed us I had a pusher too, The girl that I worked for had my first ministry job. She saw gifts in me, just like I saw gifts in you. And it's like, well, yeah, God put each of us there for a reason when he could have literally chosen anyone else, And so it's like a little bit humbling, and a little bit confidence boosting, at the same time. So if you could go back and talk to maybe first year Gordy, maybe first year Ramona Gordy, not first year Fallbrook Gordy, 4 years ago now, you've learned a ton. And just to toot your horn again, I mean, you have grown this thing. Like the growth rate of your youth group and the way it's just exploded, especially for a small town with mostly homeschool, a very high percentage of homeschool kids, and like maybe is it just one junior high?
Yeah, it's one main junior high and then a little tiny private school, but
so you were like
20 junior hires there. Yeah.
For that town and for what's going on. But everything how far you've come, if you could go back to first year Gordy and tell him something, like that one thing maybe that you wish you would have done differently. I mean, I know you talked about the confidence and all of that, but maybe is there anything logistically, I wish I would have what?
There's a lot of things. But I think the number one thing for me would be focus on the kids that you already have. because I think it's when you're growing something and starting something, that's kind of your mindset is grow. How do I make it bigger? How do I increase the numbers? And that's just your natural mindset a lot of the time. But for me, I think it would be reminding myself, you can't necessarily control who's going to, you can do things to incentivize people to walk through the door, but you're not there able to fully get people to come in or not, but you can focus on the kids that are already there. And so for me, it would be just constantly reminding myself to, you have kids already sitting in your chairs in the room, focus on those kids. They're here. Your job is the kids in the room, like pour into them, give them what they need. And then I think the cool part is through doing that, kids are more attracted to their peers rather than, a junior high pastor that they just met in the room or out at school or whatever. So I think by taking care of the kids that are already there, they'll then go and invite their friends and bring them in because of the great experience they've had. And they know, hey, this is a place where I'm loved and I'm cared for, and I want my friends or the people I know to experience that as well. And I think a lot of times, at least I didn't necessarily realize that in the beginning. And it was all on, okay, what's the next big event I can do to get people to come? Or what's like, if I make sure my teaching schedule is amazing and great and I got all this good stuff planned, that's great. But I think especially at the beginning, program and all that stuff can kind of take a back seat if you just focus on that. I've said it a bunch, but the relationship side and really taking care of the kids that you already have, because then that just starts a ripple effect and they will get their friends to come. And I think that's way more influential than anything you can do, program, game, event, teaching wise.
And Gordy, I would say from working with you and knowing you as long as I have, that is probably one of your greatest strengths is relationships. Like, because you're so fun, like everybody that meets you loves you. You have a great sense of humor. Gordy is known we play this game called Iron Gut, and we take a blender. It's a classic youth group game where you just throw a bunch of stuff in there. And Gordy, he has no gag reflex. Like he would drink it just for fun. When he was in junior high, like at camp, they would pour all the like leftover liquids into one pitcher, and he would just like chug it. And I couldn't even watch. I would start gagging. It was horrible. And he'd just like go on. He'd always dye his hair all these like funny colors, or like shave a mohawk, or wear costumes just because. And I just think your brand of relationship works so well for junior high. Definitely. Especially. And so I think like for you, when you're like, yeah, just be yourself and all of that, like you are in such a cool position because just being Gordy does attract people. Right. And just being fun and being laid back and all of that, yet you have such strong leadership skills to match that. You're not just like a big brother. It's like, I don't know, we just showed up. Gordy and I do our camps together and we just work so well together. Like I mentioned, we're both the same, like Myers-Briggs and Enneagram, but like it's this perfect mix of like organization and attention to detail. And he really knows how to lead, and he knows how to make sure things are safe and planned and organized and well put together, and then be so much fun and do a belly flop with like, the American flag on his chest or something. So it's just like you have both those things. And I think that as an outsider observing you, I think that is kind of a secret to your success. Because I think some youth pastors just like, and we've talked about youth pastor bad habits in the past on this podcast, but like just this excuse of like, oh, I'm not good at details. Oh, I'm not good at planning. I'm just more relational. But like you have it all. Like you can teach, you're relational, you're fun, you're magnetic, you're organized, you're responsible, you make good decisions. And like all those things make you so well-rounded and such a good fit for your job. So yeah, this was good. And I hope any person starting out,
because this is different than I'm taking over another ministry,
right?
Which would have its own challenges,
of course.
But starting from zero, in a town you don't know anybody.
Yeah.
That's incredible to be able to do what you did. And Ramona is really lucky to have you, and the entire staff there is amazing, but especially they're really lucky to have you on board. Last question.
Ooh, this one's fun.
Yeah, this is a fun one.
I already know what it's going to be. I'm not going to spoil it, but I know the answer. Just from knowing Gordy so well.
Okay.
If I'm wrong, I'll tell you.
The question is, in an alternate universe, if you were to do things differently and be a different person, what would be the career path you would take?
This was really hard to answer, actually, because there was an obvious one that immediately came to my brain, which
Circus clown.
I was 5 years old. I've wanted to be a professional baseball player, but
that was my guess.
Yeah.
I changed from that because it was too obvious and too just. I figured that's just what you were going to assume it was going to be.
Ooh, now I'm intrigued.
And I thought about it, and it went from baseball player to being the sixth member of One Direction to change from there to being. I would love to be part of Dude Perfect, if you know who they are.
Oh, I can totally see you doing that.
Your job in Dude Perfect is basically filming fun, ridiculous videos for youth ministry.
Yeah.
But you don't have any of the stress and pressure of like saving lives and changing people's eternities, which is great. But that you're freed from all the extra weight and pressure of that, and you get to make crazy trick shots and ridiculous videos all day. So,
you know what though? I saw a little behind the scenes of Dude Perfect, and to get those shots, it takes many takes, Gordy. I don't know.
Yeah.
I tried. Me and my friends in high school tried to make a Dude Perfect type video, and we were going to be famous. And we tried one video with 5 different pretty easy basketball shots, and the amount of times it took, we quit very quickly. So respect to them.
I assume though, with the amount of money that they're making, they're willing to stick it out another couple hours to get that
That's true.
frisbee from a roof into a dolphin's mouth, jumping through a hoop shot or whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, I guess so. I was kind of right. I told Jeff,
yeah.
I'm like, it's going to be a baseball player, baseball coach, something like that, for the NBL. Is that what it is?
What is
National
NBL?
Baseball League?
Wow. You know what? The coronavirus, everything's just, there's
NBL. Major Baseball
MLB.
MLB. Major League Base. I thought it was Major Baseball League.
That's a Major Baseball League we got there. Well, Gordy, thank you so much for being on here with us. And also, he is newly married.
Congratulations.
Tell your wife, Megan, we said hi.
They had almost a corona cancellation wedding. But they got on the beach just in the nick of time before they closed down the beaches.
Yeah.
So it was a miracle. Thank you, Lord.
Yeah. Well, you guys be safe, be healthy, and thank you so much for being on the podcast. Take care.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for checking out this episode. We hope that it provided a ton of insight for you to create health in yourself, your ministry, and your church.
And if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the Ministry Coach podcast wherever you're watching or listening. And it would mean so much to us if you would rate and review this show on Apple Podcasts.
And we'd also encourage you to share it with a friend so that it can go to help more people. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.